All right, we're gonna visit this place today, the Bishop's House in the Glengarry part of Ontario. So look at this spectacular building. Hi, why don't you introduce yourself and then tell me where we are?
Tom, I'm Brenda Baxter. I'm president of a group called the Glengarry Fencibles Trust. And we've taken our name from a military group that was formed in 1812 to help in the area, help protect the area in the War of 1812, as is implied. This is the home of a gentleman, an Alexander Macdonnell, a reverend at the time, who was asked by Brock at the time if he would reform the Fencibles that he had been involved with when in Scotland. And he agreed. And over here on the fireplace in the parlor is a, a copy, a very, very poor copy. I apologize. But you can see it's from the front page of the Montreal Herald, in which they're advertising for sharpshooters
Yeah.
for the Glengarry Fencibles and what they would be. Uh, and you might take a photo of that later. But this is an original fireplace from his era. He came over in 1804, and the house at the center of this was a two-story stone home, was his rectory. And we were able, as a charitable group, to rescue it from just the edge of demolition in 2015. We're now a charitable trust, and we've restored slash conserved the downstairs of his home, and we're in the process of slowly. We've worked. Parks Canada officials have suggested, as it is part of a national historic site, that you start when you're saving a building from the outside in. So we've done out was a new roof in 2016. We've done masonry conservation on a lot of the walls, and it's lovely to be coming inside so that we have part of the building to show. I think, Tom, you'll appreciate the depth of the stone walls over here. Um, and there are children playing. There's a school next door, and once you're in here and the doors are closed, they certainly don't have sounds like that coming through.
They're pretty incredible for
Yes,
soundproofing,
yes.
aren't they?
Macdonnell is featured on this wall as you, and that's an interesting story in itself, um, about that how that came to us. A family in Scotland heard that we were restoring the original rectory that he had when he came to Canada, and so they wanted this picture that, or this mezzotint actually, that it belonged to his friends of his parents, and we were fortunate enough to be the recipients. Some of the fireplace, as I say, was from his era, and this is rather exciting for us. In when this house has gone through different iterations, but it was a girls' school and became a boarding school, a significantly sized boarding school in 1924, and partly to do with the heating systems, partly to do with the need of space. A number of these fireplaces, and there were four downstairs, were either filled with debris and presented with different faces from here down. And we have restored these, or taken them back to their original state in the last 2 years or so. And we're quite pleased, as this had a face of red brick with painted mortar, and they had stained the hearth red to match, and it was quite ugly.
So you said this room was Macdonnell's office
Well,
originally?
it's more his parlor.
Okay.
And quite frankly, because of the reputation he had already built in Scotland, 6'4", bringing land for his former fencibles and land for others. This room was larger at that time, and it was made smaller when wings were added for the girls' school in 1924. You can see where the wall is. And we also found, and it's a kind of a comment on the respect that the workmen had when the wall was brought closer. Part of the relief of the fireplace was hidden. And when we were doing this work in here, our plasterer needed to do some work and noticed that the whole rest of the what is missing is very neatly and carefully in the wall, protected just as it was, but it needed to be smaller for if the wing was going to be accessible next door.
Can we look at some of the other rooms?
Sure. This was this is these two rooms. Again, we've had to have mantles constructed. They're simple oil on mahogany, a bit of mahogany, but on maple. But these are handmade clay bricks.
Okay.
The color of the walls was informed from the shade. This is original. It too, not only had it been filled as the one was next door, they had to accommodate, this was a music area when it was a girls' school. So this had a blackboard on it. So we discovered it was so delightful to find the fireplaces, and there were also folding doors that we took down because they weren't pocket doors as one would expect. They were simply folded, and they took quite a lot of room. And this is our meeting area, and the area we're using at present. We've kept the doors; they're safe, but until we have larger spaces, and the sections, the wings will be those larger spaces. We just want to make sure we can have people in comfortably, numerous, enough at a time that we're not crowding them.
Well, there's a TV show called Good Bones, so
Mhm.
this place definitely has good bones, eh? Like
Well, and look at the ceilings that we have. We're so fortunate in the area to have really good craftsmen, and one gentleman has worked on with Parks Canada on a neighboring Parks Canada holding, so the Sir John Johnson House, and he restored this. The walls were in surprisingly good shape, quite remarkable. The house wasn't heated for almost 25 years or so, but it's on high land, and it's apparently on an esker, so it's well drained. So it's not heated, but it didn't take a lot of repair. The ceiling, though, he was concerned about the ceiling because the paint was peeling off, and it's tin on the whole of the downstairs, as you can see. And so the gentleman that owns this painting firm, his name is Neil McGregor, and he chose on his own time up there on a scaffold to scrape and scrape and scrape and scrape and then do the painting, and he didn't charge us.
wow. So the ceilings weren't covered over; they had just painted them.
He scraped them and paint. No, they weren't.
No,
No,
as
they
a
weren't.
school or
No.
rehab center,
No,
which is fortunate. A lot of times they'll.
Yes, even as a rehab center, the administrative classrooms were next door. There were offices next door. There was a coffee area. You got the feeling that the diocese had asked them to be very respectful of this area. It had some functional things done to it to accommodate the girls' school, for instance. I'll just may I just go around the corner and you'll be quite amused.
Yeah.
This was there are stairs in the wings, but let's say the Mother Superior came down to meet parents, and she's coming down for her room upstairs. It was lovely. They had to create a space where this could be the formal receiving area and this could be the more informal, I'm in pajamas. I don't know if it would have even been that informal.
Yeah.
So you can see where there was a wall here, Tom.
Oh, okay.
And it was more than a wall, it was an arch. And in the arch, it did have glass in it at the top. There was an attempt to make it fairly attractive. 3 30-inch doors. And so when we took the place over, you had this airy space chopped in two, or in a quarter and 3/4. You had dark chocolate covered wainscoting and the wood trim was gone. This was respected. I mean, this wainscoting, I think, had been here for years and years. I think most of the time it was probably the girls' school. That's 1924. And this was the more formal area. So it had a parquet floor. This had a parquet floor at a higher level. Then you went down, and sometimes it was carpet, and sometimes it wasn't. So our goal, of course, is to make this accessible. Thus, the accessible veranda that's being built in the next couple of months. And so we went back to this floor, which was under various other floors.
So that's the original floor that was buried under different.
It is as close to the original as we're going to go, because the house is 1808, and this is an original hearth, so it's maple, and it's quite thick. There may be another one under it, but it's so substantial, and we feel that we're pretty lucky to have found this one.
Yeah, and then your restoration, what's your goal? Is it to bring it back to kind of 1804 to 1810, that era, or?
It's more an adaptive reuse. As you know, the term restoration means that you're doing it exactly as it once was. So I have to be careful with that term. It's more, in some cases, it's a conservation that we're doing. But we are trying to adhere to two periods that this has been suggested to us by officials at Parks Canada. Respect its 1808 era and the 1924. So as we're offered furniture, we have someone who's overseeing curation, and we're very much trying to do so, while at the same time keeping furniture this was in here when we took it over. Okay. Yes. Or it was in here, pardon me, in pictures we have found of the 1930s. And it's been in storage. People have been very, very kind for us. We have not spent anything on refurbishing, because what we're focusing any donations on is, back to your question, work on conserving, particularly from the outside in, as Parks Canada suggests.
So kind of stabilize the building first, and then as that's achieved, then you can continue chip away at the interior.
And we're so lucky that it was built the way that it was. When you think that it went without heating, it's gone for years. And look how straight the floors are relatively. Look at the walls. It's quite remarkable.
Stunning, yeah. And then somewhere down the road, what is the intended use of the building? I know it's a National Historic Site or a site of significance, but
we are already renting it, but it's a kind of a supervised rental. For example, we are having a wedding in May. It's the first one we've agreed to have, but it is the bride has just finished a museum curation, master's in museum.
okay.
and curation, or to be a curator. And so it's a small group, suits us. It will have some of its perhaps toasts, very sedate, married in the ruins, I should back up. And then the reception, a low-key part of it in here. And then there's going to be a small tent beside us on the west side.
Okay.
And so you have benefit from the view, the land, the use of the veranda. We've even had, it's a small detail, but when you were saying, when we had this veranda redone and it was modeled on the one that had been, you'll notice over there we have electrical outlets, so that when you have musicians playing here, and the acoustics are kind of magical in the way that it carries across this valley.
I've seen the pictures of some of the concerts you've had here,
Yeah.
eh? The musicians are on the veranda and
Yes.
your audience are seated down on the grounds there.
And if it's cooler, the musicians can be on the steps. And it's that they benefit from the shade if it's in the afternoon, but they can be on the steps, and then you can have people closer to you too. So the food would be catered, and because we are not in a position to have caterers come into the house, so we're being very, very careful. But we also had a celebration of life here in last June, and 150 people attended.
Can you talk? I've dominated a lot of
No,
your time, but can you talk about the significance of the ruins, this building, to the local community?
Well, the ruins, of course, only became ruins in 1970. It was a lovely church, stone church built without pillars. So the July night, when whether electrical storm, and it burnt, as you know from being in it, it burnt and straight, and the roof went straight down into the basement, and you're left with the gorgeous walls if you turn so that your audience can be looking at them. Well, that church in its original form was built by the Macdonnell who came here, and it was his rectory, built for him in 1808. That was a church. Well, in becoming the ruin, and that was another thing when it happened, the politicians are very, very concerned about the walls and wanted it knocked down, perhaps with an imprint left of where it had been, but wanted it knocked down. But there was, first of all, there was gorgeous looking, and there was wonderful, wonderful support within the community, and it took a fair amount of time and Scottish stonemasons' expertise to seal the top for the weather, especially this North American weather. But in terms of the connection, it became something people wanted to see. As a matter of fact, Ryan Gosling was from Cornwall, and years ago, people might not realize he had been a Mouseketeer. And when whether it was Disney or whatever wanted to do a piece on his background, his handlers were aware that something like the ruins could be an asset. So you see him as a young teenager jumping around in there, or performing a bit. It's more and more tourists are coming. Of course, that was years ago. And so when it was deemed that this house should be demolished because its land was valuable to a neighboring building. Though, like the people who fought to save the ruins, there was a significant group of us who were very interested in saving this. And for example, I don't have a history background. Some colleagues definitely have better appreciation than I, but I had been in tourism when I was in a university and studying university as a summer job, and knew that with the ruins across the way, and remembering, because my mom and her sisters had boarded here, and I knew what this had looked like in days gone by, it only made sense that it was worth fighting for.
Well, I'm sure glad you have.
It,
So if people are interested in your project and want to support you, how do they get involved?
First of all, it would be fabulous because we're quite a small group. We're, as you know, we have a website, and we were able to get the domain name bishopshouse.ca. That was quite a few years ago. And we, it would have our mailing address. And if you're, let's say that you're visiting and it's, you know what I might do? I might get an envelope so that I could flash it on the screen for you. Would that help?
Sure. So, Brenda, as we wrap up, I'll share an image of that envelope with your mailing address on it. I will also put your web address into the description for the video. And then from your website, if people wish to make an online donation, they can do so there too.
Yes, we have PayPal as well. And we're so focused on protecting the building. And we've hired professionals, architects, and we get advice also at times from Parks Canada. We're really trying to do this properly.
Well, and then to give people a sense of the incredible work that you had done, you said this is an image of what the building looked like as you took it over.
Yes, right? In 2015, when they put in the demolition request, the owners boarded up all of the windows, and these are the wings that were put on in 1924, and they're beautiful, beautiful mission style windows. Also, these are the base of, excuse me, I think that is of 2 lampposts that you'll see. One of the bases you'll see outside that we've had restored, but culling all of the overgrowth was one of the first.
Well, the grounds are spectacular now, and then you were showing me earlier you rebuilt the dry stone walls on the entrance. So very much a labor of love.
Yes.
But sure appreciate what you're doing. Impressed with how far you have all gotten so far.
Thank you,
look
Tom.
forward to see how this continues to develop.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure meeting you.